Okay.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this DEI training session today as we discuss affordable housing. I am Trista Stout-Walker with United Way of Southwest Alabama, and I welcome all of you on behalf of United Way and the South Alabama Coalition of Nonprofits. This opportunity is a joint venture between those organizations, and we could not do it without our sponsors, the Alabama Power Foundation. So let's dive right in because this hour is going to go by very quickly. And so today on our DEI panel to discuss affordable housing, we have Miss Teresa Bettis with she's the executive director for the Center for Fair Housing, and she is joined with Danny Patterson, and Danny is with the Gulf States Health Policy Center and Bank On and many other things that the list is too long. So we welcome both of you as you lead this discussion. So Teresa, I'm going to pass it over to you to start the conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you for having us this morning, trying to get everything set up here. And glad to have Danny. So Danny, as I'm talking, feel free to jump in, add, and comment because we're going to do this together.
All right.
Okay, so let's see, share. And let's see, I want to go here. Okay, there we go. Awesome. So we're going to talk a bit about affordable housing this morning. I recognize quite a few people on here this morning, and I am the executive director for the Center for Fair Housing here in Mobile. And so kind of glad to be able to do this. I always like to talk about the issue of housing and what's going on with it and everything as it relates to housing and what's happening. And Danny is really good about talking about the other social determinants that impact as well. So I hope today's discussion will be robust. I'm going to try to present and leave room. We want to leave enough room for to actually dialogue with you all. And Danny, at the end, I was leaving at the end to talk about how the question was asked about how to refer people to us and how to work together. And so we can hopefully have a robust conversation around that.
Good.
So affordable housing is the first thing that we're going to talk about. And so when you think about affordable housing, that definition means a lot of things to a lot of people, right? So what I think may be affordable housing, Leslie may have a different idea about what affordable housing is, as is Danny, as is, somebody else on the call. So it depends, is what I can say about it as far as that. But when we think about from HUD's definition, what affordable housing is, it is usually when your housing costs are at least 30% less of a household's income. And it is in short supply. I don't think that anybody is naive to the fact that here in the Mobile area, we are definitely in a affordable housing shortage crisis. And it's not just us, it's all across the country. And so when you think about high income earners and hourly wage workers, people who are homeless and everybody in between, the rent or the home price that is affordable, as I said, it varies from one household to the next. But there is a need that we have affordable housing, and that is shared by everybody, whether you are a person who is of wealth or not, because depending on what the housing costs, even if you are a fairly wealthy person, it could be an issue. Let's see here. So let's do some math. Y'all like math? And most people don't know about this. And I wanted to just kind of give you some look at it. When you see the numbers, it really makes a lot of sense. So you think about a person. So our national minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, right? So if you work 40 hours a week, that's about $290 a week or $1,160 a month. So what HUD says to be affordable for that, your rent should be no more than 30% of that monthly income. And if we look over here on this side, does my pointer show when I do that?
Yes.
Okay, so So your rent, if you make $7.25 an hour, you know, and you're working full time, your rent should be no more than $348. That's 30% of your disposable income, right? Then if we look at somebody who makes $8.25, which a lot of places are paying is $8.25, you're going to make about $1,300 a month. And so then we're still looking at rent costing you, if it's affordable, would be no more than $396 a month. Now, $16.82 working full time, which is what's needed in the state of Alabama to be able to afford a modest housing. You need to make about $2,691 a month. And then what becomes affordable to you, 30% of that would be $807 a month. Now, first of all, does anybody know where you can find an apartment to rent or a house to rent for $348 a month if you make minimum wage? I do not. Nowhere. Okay. And if you do, if you're blessed enough to make the $1,682, you are hard pressed to find something for $800 a month. And then what most people don't know is that most rental companies require that you make at least 3 times the rent in order to be able to rent from them. You've got to, in some places, we have heard that it's even up to 4 times the rent in order to be able to rent. So you're working, you can show proof that you make income, but they want your income to be 3 times or 4 times whatever that monthly rental rate is. And a lot of people don't know that. I did a little bit of research. The Rent Cafe, here are current Mobile rental rates. This is the data that they have. The average rent for an apartment in Mobile is $1,081. And the average size is 933 square feet. So again, when you think about the 3 times the rent requirement, then if that's the average rent, so on average, you need to make about $3,243 a month or $20+ per hour, full time. You know, I don't know a whole lot of people, everyday people, unfortunately, here in the Mobile area that are making that kind of money. Danny, you going to say something?
Well, this is why so many people have to have more than one job.
Yes, they absolutely have to have more than one job. And that's $20 an hour you working full time, right? So if you're making $875 full time or even $1682 full time, you still don't have enough. So you got to work more than 80 hours, more than 40 hours a week. I'm sorry, more than 40 hours a week to be able to afford housing. Now, out of Mobile's population, 49% of the households in Mobile are renter occupied, where we have about 51% that are owner occupied. So it's not like Mobile is top heavy in home ownership. It's a few points over, but that's not a significant amount over where we are with renters. So about half the population in the city of Mobile are renters. And, you know, it's really interesting. I was going down Schillinger's last week, and I noticed they were building a storage facility. And when I looked at it, I said, I wonder, Mobile sure is building a lot of storage facilities. And in my mind, I thought, are people having to downsize? What's the boom for the storage business in Mobile that people are now needing to store so much? So if you had been a homeowner and you've now lost your home and you're having to go to an apartment, then you will have to downsize with some of your stuff. You're not going to be able to take everything. That's just a thought. I don't know that that's true, but I am curious to know why we seem to have such, you know, an increase in storage facilities around the city. So when we talk about the rental ranges for Mobile, so only about 9% of the rent ranges fall with between the $500 and $700 range. The majority of rental rates in Mobile run between $700 and $1,000. and followed up by the 1,001 to 1,500 as far as rental ranges. And all of those, based on the numbers we previously looked at, price people out of housing and what's affordable with the wages that we have here in the city of Mobile, and how they are able to obtain housing and being able to maintain that.
Mhm.
Okay.
That middle one, Teresa, that one at 38%,
Mhm.
you wouldn't be surprised, but a lot of people may be surprised that there are some people that you would really definitely consider low-income people that have recently found themselves in that 38% because of how they raised these rental rates recently.
Yes. And so that's one of the other things that we've seen. I can share that with the group. So as of probably the first quarter of this year, we have been made aware that there are at least 10 apartment complexes within the city of Mobile who up to this time had been accepting the housing choice vouchers or the Section 8 vouchers, who are now no longer accepting those vouchers. And I had my staff to do a little bit of research, and that's going to be somewhere about 2,000 units that are now off the market that would have or could have possibly provided housing for persons who had those vouchers who now don't have them. And if you think about the plans to demolish Thomas James and RV Taylor, and we're talking about 500 households there who are being given Section 8 vouchers, their choices of being able to find affordable housing are dwindling, right? And so we have now less affordable housing in the city of Mobile than we had back in 1998 when the Fair Housing Center opened their doors. And there has been no real new development for affordable housing within the city limits. You all may remember a while back, there was a big boom of building out on Schillinger's Road with a lot of affordable housing. And I thought, okay, well, it's kind of far out, but at least Mobile is building affordable housing. But it's just over the city limits line. So it's in the county. So it's actually not in the city limits of Mobile. And then the bus routes stop at Cody Road. So you think about the travel you have to make between Cody and Schillinger's to be able to even catch a bus to get to somewhere in the city of Mobile. So we've not, the city has not done due diligence to keep up with affordable housing and the development of affordable housing. We've had development of housing. We have not had real development of affordable housing for working class families or those families who would fall into low. Now, when you look at the housing authority that is now closing out public housing, and it's not just on them, let me be clear about that. HUD made a mandate probably about 40 or 50 years ago that they were getting out of the business of the public housing model. So a lot of the housing authorities don't have a choice at some point, you know, it's being phased out. But however, what's a little different about what's happening here in Mobile is that I am very much aware that the housing was allowed to go into ill repair. HUD gives those housing authorities money every year to maintain those properties. And we know for a fact under the leadership of the prior Mr. Vaughn, when he was executive director there, that he did not spend the money on maintaining RV Taylor or Thomas James. And so they have been allowed to fall into ill repair. And HUD has guidelines that once the housing goes to a certain level of ill repair, that they can be torn down. And so that's how we find ourselves in this place. But, you know, I would challenge anybody to say that that has happened by design, that they were allowed. They didn't have to get into the level of ill repair that they're in now, even with the housing and the Happy Hills area, the Josephine Allen housing. Mr. Vaughn was given money by HUD to go in and rehab those housing units, but instead he closed it down without HUD's knowledge. And HUD came in and found out after the fact that he had emptied the whole place out and they didn't even know it. Caused a whole lot of trouble. So the housing didn't have to get that. There was some inner workings happening there that caused us to find that housing being off the market and not repaired. And so when we think about what are some of the affordable neighborhoods in Mobile, this is what I was able to find out around the Georgia Avenue area, where the average rent went for about $688 a month, which is still a stretch for a lot of working class folks. An area called Hannon Park, same thing, average, the Linecoff area. And if you were looking for great deals, you could look around the Lions Park area, the Washington Square area, and a place in Mobile called Fisher. And these were below what the asking prices were. But still, you know, if you did the 3 times the rent with the 688, you still need to make $2,064 per month or $13 per hour and work full time. You needed to get those 40 hours a week. And a lot of times you find that places are not hiring people full time, but they hire them just shy of being full time. So they don't ever quite get the full time hours to be able to make enough money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So when we talk about the lack of affordable housing and what the impacts are, let us remember that affordable housing affects everyone, including those who don't need to worry about having access to it. While those who are negatively impacted most by the lack of affordable housing oftentimes are people of color, and it affects widespread regardless of an individual's race, class, and sex when you talk about the lack of affordable housing. And so what are some of the impacts? Individuals and families who lack affordable housing may experience reduced access to adequate health insurance, lower quality and more expensive medical care, difficulty in paying their bills in full or on time, putting them at risk of eviction or even homelessness. They'll have less money for basic necessities like food and clothing, the lack of reliable transportation, and then reduced access to quality education opportunities. And so another thing that when you think about affordable housing, the other piece that you have to look at with affordable housing is even the age of the housing, right? So like some people, if you live in housing that's much older, it is not as energy efficient. And so where if you live in a newer home, maybe your power bill averages somewhere between maybe $50 and $100. But if you live in an aged home, your power bill could be $300, $400, $500 because of lack of proper insulation, the building of the house, and all of that. And so you think about if you got to come up with $688 for the rent, and then you got a $400 or $500 power bill on top of that, and you haven't paid your water, you know, you haven't bought groceries or any of those things. So those are some of the negative impacts that you see around that. Go ahead, Dan.
Most of those things that you see on that chart, matter of fact, all of those things you see on that chart are those most of them are the non-medical factors that affect a person's health outcome. And that's why we talk about these social determinants of health, because the biggest impact of all the social determinants of health, which is, you know, economic stability, income, debt, education, food, all those types of things are considered social determinants of health, which are pretty much on this chart. The largest impact to a person's health outcome is housing. And I guess it sounds intuitively obvious that housing would have such an impact because that's your physical environment. That's sort of keeping you out of weather and away from harm and danger and security. So housing as a social determinant of health has the largest impact on a person's health outcomes. That's why they say oftentimes your zip code is more important than your genetic code in terms of how long you're going to live. They did a study in Minnesota, and basically the study showed that a particular neighborhood had a life expectancy of additional like 20 years versus the neighborhood next to it. And they had asked the gentleman in the poorer neighborhood, what are you going to do about it? He said, I'm going to get on the interstate and move down to that neighborhood, because what they had there, the physical environment and the way they took care of that neighborhood, et cetera, walkability, exercise, transportation, everything that helped build up and improve your health outcome was based on a zip code. So this housing, as I look at it, is it is so important. It is so broad. It touches so many different parts of our life that those things on that list you see there are all impacted by affordable housing. So I just I wanted to drive that point home, Teresa.
Yes, thank you, Danny. So if you're wondering how an individual's challenges stemming from the lack of affordable housing impacts their community, here's what we're looking at: increased homelessness, lost tax revenue for counties, towns, and cities. Because when you have home ownership and you're able to have that, that's a plus for your municipalities because you collect those taxes. Greater burden on public services like the libraries and mass transit, less diverse workforces, and increased costs for healthcare. So some research, some more research and data that I found is that the shortage of affordable housing costs the American economy around $2 trillion a year in lower wages and productivity. Without having affordable housing, families have constrained opportunities to increase their earnings, causing a slower GDP growth for our country. That increasing access to affordable housing is the most cost-effective strategy for reducing childhood poverty and increasing economic mobility in the United States. Nationally, there's a shortage of more than 7 million affordable homes in our nation. 11 million plus extremely low income families lack housing. There's no state or county, be clear about this. Research shows that there is no state or county where a renter working full-time at minimum wage can afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. There is no state. So it's not just Mobile. I want to be clear about this. There's no state or county where if you're making minimum wage that you can afford a 2-bedroom apartment. So you wonder why we have a problem with homelessness? Here we are. Surely you guys have seen, I've seen the reports where people are living out of their cars. They work every day, but they still cannot afford to be in a house. They have to live out of their car. 75% of all extremely low-income families are severely cost burdened, paying more than half of their income in rent. And this is a problem, right? In that every state and every community is impacted by families have few options. Each year the shortage gets worse, and it has definitely gotten worse post-COVID. It is even worse now than what it was before COVID. And that's why people are homeless in our country and why families are struggling to pay for groceries. Now we're looking at the cost of inflation when you're paying, almost $10 in some cases for a dozen of eggs, and to be able to pay to go visit your doctor. So when we think about what is missing in this picture is the political will to provide resources that will put these solutions into practice. So it is those that are empowered that have the ability to really make change. It's their political will to do it, and that's the piece that's missing for everybody. So an affordable quality home is critical to a family's well-being, physically, mentally, economically, and developmentally. Think about, you got a single mother, and in Mobile, the largest segment of our population in Mobile are single female head of households, right? They also have the highest numbers where poverty is concerned. And so you think about that single mother who is trying to put food on the table, who's trying to keep clothes on the backs of her children, and trying to pay the power bill, trying to pay the rent, trying to figure out how to juggle all of these things, and every month coming up short. And she's working, right? She's doing the best that she can. Can you imagine the mental toll begins to attack her physical body, right? She's mentally distraught because she doesn't see a way out. She's working full time, but she still isn't making enough money. And it's like the old saying of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You pay this one this month, pay the next person the next month, because you can't pay them all at one time. And we talk about the home prices, whether it be for rental or ownership, they continue to outpace the wage growth. So at the beginning of the year, we began to see people calling in. One lady specifically, she was a nurse. She worked full time and she had been paying $700 a month in rent. She had gotten notice from her landlord that the rent was doubling. Her rent at the time when her lease renewed in a few months, she was going to have to pay $1,400 a month for the same unit that she had been paying $700 a month. And she was panicked because she couldn't pay it. She knew in a matter of 90 days that probably she and her kids were about to be homeless because there was no way that she made money, but she didn't make that kind of money to be able to absorb that increase in the rent. And so we saw that across somewhere between 30 and 50% increase in the cost of housing. Mm-hmm. And so families are finding themselves, they're struggling in major areas, just like we're saying, you know, it's the nutrition, it's education, it's transportation, it's childcare, it's healthcare. When you go to the doctor, there's a copay that you have to pay. And a lot of times people who don't have the money, when they have kids, the thing is, I don't feel good. I probably should go to the doctor, but I don't have the $35 copay that I'm going to need to pay. I need to put gas in the car, or I need to buy groceries for my kids to be able to have something, you know, to eat. So it's a real struggle there. So now let me share something with you. This is, catch your breath. Did it go forward or did it go back? Let me see.
It went forward.
There we go. Mm-hmm. All right. This is hot off the press, new data, right, for the state of Alabama. See this number in red? In the state of Alabama, we are short 86,000 affordable rental units in the state of Alabama. Just let that sink in for a minute. Mm. We are almost 86,000 units short of the need. Okay. And the maximum income for a 4-family household for the state level for a family of 4 is $26,500, but they need $33,944 to afford a 2-bedroom rental home. Okay. 70% of low-income renter households with severe cost burden. So 70% of extremely low-income household renters, 70% have a severe cost burden mm-hmm. when we're talking about housing. And then we look at who makes up that those households. 22% are disabled, 36% are in the labor force. Walmart is one of the biggest makers of folks that are on welfare because they don't pay them. They work them right below full time so that they don't have to pay good wages. They don't have to offer benefits. Our seniors are at 23%. Single adult caregivers are 3%, 12% other, in this school 4%, right? Mm-hmm. So the numbers are staggering when you think about that. Okay, but let's look a little deeper. Let's look specifically at Mobile. We're in District 1. Mobile is going to fall within District 1. We're the Congressional District 1, where Jerry Carl is our representative. Mm-hmm. And when we look at total rental households, right, severely burdened, at or below the 30% of the median income, area median income, we have 20,000 here for Mobile. Severely burdened households are 15,000. So that's 75% have severe burden. So when we talk about the affordable units available per 100, there are 40. So if you meet the definition of your income is 30% of the area median income, mm-hmm. we have 40 units that are needed per 100. So out of the per 100, there are only 40 units. 40. But what's actually needed is we have a deficit of what's actually needed. This is for Mobile County if you fall within this range. And the numbers that I plugged in here would be the income that they would make. So at 30% of the median income, if you make about $17,000 a year, you fall in this category, and we need an additional 12,000 units to meet that need. Okay, if you meet 50% of the area median income, about $29,000, we have 70 units available per 100, but we are still short 10,000 units. If you make 80%, means you almost make what the area median income, you making 46,000. Okay, that's pretty good, right? Okay, and then of that, we do have, for if you make at least that amount of money, we got 15 more units than we need, right? And then we have 7,000 more units over what's needed. But we got about 22,000, 23,000 units that are needed to help these other folk who are falling in that 30% and 50% bracket, okay? If we come down here and we look at the affordability statistics for Mobile, so we have 55,000 renter households. The area median income is $58,000, right? And of that, there's that 17,000. You need to make 17,000 if you're in 30. So the affordable rent for you at that price point, you making that wages would be $437. But we already know Mobile doesn't. We're looking at what the average cost of a unit is. You can't find anywhere for $437 to rent. If it does in Mobile, I assure you, it probably has no running water, no power. It's probably leaning on one leg. The fair market value for a 1-bedroom apartment in Mobile is $658. Okay, if it's a 1-bedroom housing wage, so what you would need, if it's just you, and you're gonna get a 1-bedroom, you need to make at least $12.65 an hour. A 2-bedroom unit goes for $824. You got to make at least $15.85 an hour. Okay. And then if you're here hours, look at this. So if you make minimum wage and you need a 2-bedroom, you need to make 87 hours. You got to do 87 hours. So you need to have some overtime somewhere. Right. And then that average winter wage is $13.70. Numbers are staggering, right?
Yes, yeah.
Hang on, let's see, trying to go to this next slide. Okay. Now, looking again at Alabama. So here's the state housing wage on average, what you need to make in Alabama to be able to afford housing. The fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment, $849. Okay, you must earn at least $2,829 a month, or $33,944 annually. Do y'all know a lot of folks that we serve that make that kind of money? And that's not a lot of money. You know, we're not saying that's a lot of money, but let's be realistic about the people that are walking through our doors, right?
Right.
You would need to work 90 hours a week at minimum wage to be able to afford a 2-bedroom rental home. Not 90 hours every 2 weeks. I said 90 hours per week. That's more than 2 jobs, Dan.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
That's more than 2 jobs. Okay. You need 74 hours per week at minimum wage to afford a 1-bedroom unit. So we're talking about 2.3 jobs. We're talking about 1.9 jobs over here if it's a 1-bedroom, and this if it's a 2-bedroom. Where to go? Okay. So, and then when we're looking at this, the average winter wage that's state facts is $15.78, so it's still short. I recently heard that high-paying jobs were $15 an hour. Well, $15 an hour is the new minimum wage. That's not a high-paying job, right? It is not. And then when we think about looking at even over if you're in the Baldwin County area, what the housing wage is that you need to make at least $19.56.
Wow.
It's staggering. It really is. It's staggering. When I do this research, it's always just heart-wrenching, because you feel like you're in such a hole that it's like, how do you, and I said this a long time ago, years ago, when there was plenty of money in the markets out there for building and development of affordable housing, and people were doing home ownership, the big push on President Bush to have all these first-time home buyers. And what I saw, what people were doing were laying subsidies. Danny, I'm sure you remember this.
Mhm.
You might have a house that actually was on the market for $130,000, but by the time they got through putting 4 or 5 subsidies on it, they had probably gotten it down to about 80 or 85,000.
Right.
And at some point I said, well, gosh, you're taking all of this subsidy, put it down to get it affordable. And it's almost like a trick, because I'm paying taxes on a house that actually costs $130,000, even though you're selling it to me for 85,000. When that tax bill comes, it's not going to be for 85,000. It's going to be for the 130, right? And so the maintenance and the upkeep on that housing and being able to pay the property taxes and all of those things, I said, wouldn't it make sense to pay people more money? Take the money that you're putting in to put subsidies on housing. Why not? Why don't we raise the amount of money that people are being paid so that they can actually afford the housing? Just my thought, because that's a huge amount of subsidy to put on top of a home. And or do you look on, are there other ways to build more affordable? When I mean in the construction of the housing, are there other ways to build housing where the price points can be lower, so that it takes a lower price point to actually build that house? Danny, I don't know if you have anything to add with that or not.
I was going to say that it's obvious people are doing what they can, because most of the people are not getting a living wage. A lot of them are less than that $15 for sure.
Yes.
But they are doing other things to supplement the cost of their housing.
Yeah.
Some of the landlords are not going to back down on the rents that they're charging. People are having to supplement. They will get food stamps. They will look for other ways under the table, if you will, to get income in order to make sure they keep a roof over their head and their children, to take care of their children. So these numbers are real, but I think what we already know is that people are having to go find income anywhere they can to help supplement what they're not getting on these jobs and 2 jobs and job and a half, whatever it might end up being that they're working. But the stress levels are so high now that the mental issues are starting to really pop up.
They are, Danny. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so benefits. I'm on breeze this because I do want to, we got 20 minutes. I want to give us some time to talk. So having an ample supply of affordable places to live fosters a host of economic benefits to the community. It also serves to heighten civic participation, increase public safety, and create a greater sense of community and pride. The economic impact of housing affordability can start a ripple effect for an entire community. When families spend less on housing, they have more to spend on goods and services, and those transactions fuel the community wide economic growth by bolstering local businesses and the local workforce. They also contribute to the local tax base that gets invested back into the community through government programs and infrastructure improvements and resources that benefit everyone. So when we have economic diversity, according to Majora Carter, she's an urban revitalization strategist, consultant, it's really important for that neighborhood to succeed. People want neighborhoods where they can get their creature comforts and needs taken care of, whether that's the barbershop or the cleaners or a bookstore or a restaurant. But when you keep people working in these positions to keep businesses open in the neighborhoods humming, affordable housing options based on income levels must be made available. Vibrant communities have lots of different types of people in them, not just one particular type of person. And if we don't quickly secure affordability for some, that vibrancy can fade very quickly. And we can clearly see that here in Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
Homes that are affordable allow the families to put a stake in their community, the improving space for everyone who is living there. Strong neighborhoods exist where there's quality housing. They are invested and engaged in their communities. They have access to transportation, employment, and educational opportunities, and they have a sense of safety and inclusion.
Absolutely.
So 6 ways that affordable housing boosts the local economy. More money is spent in local communities, fewer evictions, healthier populations means a healthier economy. More affordable housing creates more job opportunities, improved government infrastructure, better opportunities for investing in the future. And one of the most obvious benefits is the increase in discretionary spending. For people, rent is the biggest and most important expense each month, that rent or that mortgage payment. But when residents of affordable housing can make their rental payments or mortgage payments, they're able to spend more on local purchases and they have greater access. So the National Low Income Housing Coalition, if you don't know about them, is a wonderful website. Join them, become a member. They believe that just communities where all community members have access to economic and educational opportunities as well as affordable housing, evidence shows that access to stable, affordable housing in communities of opportunity has broad positive impacts that can lead to better health and educational outcomes and higher lifetime earnings, especially for children. Okay. I think we're at a place now working together. There were some questions. We may have some questions in the chat. I'm going to stop the share here. The question was, how do we collaborate? How do you refer your clients? How do we work better together? And Danny, you piggyback on this. For the Center for Fair Housing, one of the first things that I would suggest is let us do an in-service for your organization to talk to you about what the Fair Housing Center actually does, right? And I think that would better help you be able to refer people to us. Generically, I will say if you have tenants that are having housing related issues, it can't hurt to call and share with us what's happening. You may not be able to identify, because we do this every day, and it may seem like it's not a fair housing issue, but we may know some different questions to ask the clients based on what the scenario is. That a lot of times, because we get calls all the time, but it's only after sometimes we ask some specific questions that we find out, oh, okay, well, there really is a potential fair housing violation here. And the clients that are calling don't know how to identify that. They just know that something feels unfair or that's not right. Danny, anything you want to add?
I would just say from a Gulf States Health Policy Center point of view, we do work primarily around policy, but one thing that we've been doing is trying to get more involved with helping people get food, because we know that the money that it takes to take care of housing leaves money short for other things. So we've been working on some food drives out in the Bayou La Battery area primarily, but we're also working with Tomanville, Crichton, CDC to help them with theirs. And there's one over in Trinity Garden, anywhere that we could help supplement the situation that people are having with food, because so much money is being spent on housing or is required on housing. You've got to look at the other things around housing, transportation, food, the things we were talking about, education. A comment that came up in, I think the chat, was about crime. I guarantee you, neighborhoods that are stable, that have affordable housing, the crime rate is lower. There's no doubt, no matter what study you look at, when you have a stable neighborhood and you have people that can afford their housing in those neighborhoods, crime is less. So that's a real big deal for us to remember that.
Let's see here. There was a question. Okay, the question Brian had is there a coalition of nonprofits and for-profits who is working on this issue? Brian, when you say this issue, what issue specifically are you speaking of? And you're on mute.
Oh, affordable housing.
Affordable housing. I don't know of a specific, Danny, I don't know if you know, but I don't know of a specific coalition that is working on affordable housing?
I don't think there is a quote unquote nonprofit type coalition working on it. There are people in the private sector who are seeking Alabama tax credits in order to do development around Mobile. And those people are private and their organizations are probably LLCs, but that's what it's going to take, those groups. And then the point of pressure that the nonprofits can bring to some of those developers would be to make sure that they know we're there and we are aware, and we don't want them just to come in and do their thing, take the profits and run. We really want them to make those homes safe, want to make sure those homes are affordable. And there are some guidelines if they use some of those tax credits from the state. There are guidelines around that, so they're supposed to meet those guidelines. So I don't know of a nonprofit. In fact, the one nonprofit that was brought in from New Orleans supposedly to help do that Gayfers project, that was a group that came from New Orleans, right? So it wasn't even anybody here.
Yeah. And I think the other piece, prior to COVID, I had just started a Fair Housing Coalition. And then, of course, COVID happened, but we are looking to relaunch again before the end of the year with the work of the Fair Housing Coalition, because one of the things, like for the city and counties and most municipalities, they get the community development block grant dollars, they get the home dollars, and all of those can be used to impact the affordable housing crisis. And so, you know, while Mobile has continued to develop housing, they have not developed affordable housing. And they can take some of those dollars and actually provide incentives to developers or builders to build more affordable housing. So that is a body of work, Brian, that the Fair Housing Coalition could take, because the lack of affordable housing is an impediment for the city of Mobile to fair housing choice. We don't have it. And so the city has not been good at taking a lead on developing affordable housing. And I know there's been some initiatives that have come out of the mayor's office for home ownership, but you know, that's a long ways down the road for most of the people that we serve. They're not going to be in a place to become homeowners, you know, for a few years. And then, you know, stack on what has happened with COVID, and people who might have been at the cusp of being able to purchase a home probably are not now because of health impacts or the loss of employment or jobs as a result of, you know, after effects of COVID. So that is something that can happen. And then let's see, are you aware of organizations that offer weatherization, emergency efficiency services? Okay, Rhonda, that is usually the work that is done by Community Action. They usually get the monies for weatherization and energy efficiency, those types of things. Dana, I don't know if you know of anybody else who does that.
No, I do know that Mobile Community Action does it, and that's Mobile County and Washington County. And I do know that they have certain cycles when that grant money comes in from ADECA and wherever else it comes in, and then they get it out obviously really quick. And it's not just weatherization, it's also for light bills, water bills, those types of things. So definitely check in with Mobile Community Action. Letitia Williams is one of the best over there to help with that.
I'll put her contact information in the chat. And then also my point of contact is Brenda Nettles at Mobile Community Action. So both of those ladies can connect you to that service.
Good.
Any questions? Any more questions?
Anything else in the chat?
Comments? Diane?
I don't really have a question, but I do want to say something.
Sure.
Because after listening to your presentation today, it's very compelling. And I would like to present the idea that homelessness services are not necessarily the answer to our lack of affordable housing. And so we kind of look around at the program here where I work at Family Promise and my agency cohorts as, why aren't you the solution to these problems? Well, we should be serving a very small portion of people. We should be here for people who have fallen into unimaginable circumstances, practically. We shouldn't be here to be catching people who are working all the time and should be able to afford housing. I would love to see our city partner with us in a different way and meet their citizens' needs and appreciate what homeless service providers are doing to try to pick up the slack that we were never intended to provide. Additionally, I am not always happy with the way that we present the issue of homelessness as a personal problem. I saw that Kim said it, you mentioned it in your presentation. We can offer lots of life skills classes because they're helpful. And we can offer a lot of case management because it's great, and trying to work your way through these systems can be difficult, so having a guide is helpful. But this is a systemic problem. And so these individual types of interventions that we're offering to our clients don't solve the systemic problem. We have to provide more affordable housing. So I really encourage all of the people who work with me in this homelessness community to stop framing this issue as, well, people just need to work harder. People just need to manage their money better. People just need to not ever fall into addiction or divorce or family death. Like, how do you avoid those things altogether?
Right.
I would love to for us to remember to frame this issue as the folks we work with have been priced out of housing. They've been priced out of affordable housing that's safe. You might be able to find something, like Teresa said, that's standing on one leg. That was a good phrase.
Yeah.
But this has led to increased lengths of shelter stays. It's led to cyclical homelessness, an increase in cyclical homelessness. It's led to more service provider hopping, where your 90 days are up here. Now what do? I still wasn't able to find something I could afford with my voucher. Well, okay, now I'll call Family Promise and see if they can take me for 90 days. So we need to back up all the way to the beginning of the problem and work on it back there so that these services are really used for what they're meant to be used for. And now I'm going to be quiet. Thank you.
Good point.
Good point, Diane. And that is, you know, for folks who are in subsidized housing, so it is, yeah, some places, sometimes you can find some subsidized housing, but I can just say that lots of times those of us who are in our community or who are struggling and have to go into some types of subsidized housing are treated unconscionably by the management of the people who manage those properties. They, as much as they can degrade them, as much as they can remove any remaining dignity that they have, they tend to be slum landlords. They don't make repairs. And when you're subsidized housing, you get money from the government to maintain that housing. Yet you will let people go months without a working stove. You will let people go months without working toilets, months without, with water leaks and roof leaks, and not make a single repair. And you completely ignore the tenants. So it is it's a huge problem for the lack of humanity, because, for me, I can't say it for everybody, but there go I by the grace of God that I am not one of these individuals, because I do feel like we are all one life catastrophe away from finding ourselves in this same position. And to think that you're not, and that you are in a place, COVID should have taught people that, if nothing else. People who were on top, are now on the bottom, but through no fault of their own. So there is a real need for awareness. I think, Diane and Brian, I think that, the work of the Fair Housing Coalition is definitely, this is some stuff that we can pick up and start back working. And now, more than ever, with some of the things that Biden has put in place, that, he's directing federal dollars to go into those communities and neighborhoods that have been historically neglected. So how do we begin to create a strategy to put pressure on the folks that are getting this federal money and the federal departments that have this money to start really investing in it into the communities where they really have been intended for, right? And taking a proactive approach to addressing the need of affordable housing. And, you know, I'm curious that, you know, I think we need to develop a way to put the people who are being directly impacted by this, let's give them a spotlight. You know, they need to go talk to the city council. They need to go talk to the mayor. You know, the community needs to understand. There's a young lady, let me tell you, it's such a vicious circle. There's a young lady that we helped some years ago. When I met her, she was 7 months pregnant with a 1-year-old son living out of her car. And she was trying to get in housing. She had took what little money she had, paid a deposit, went to the power company, paid the deposit, get her utilities turned on. She goes back to the apartment complex and the lady tells her, oh, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to rent to you. And she says, what do you mean you are? She had given her the keys to the unit and everything. And she says, well, you know, you got something in your background check. It had been an instance where she had been in a domestic violence situation. Her boyfriend had jumped on her. She fought him back. The police were called. Well, they arrested both of them. Okay, criminalized the victim, right? So that was going to be the reason that they were not going to rent to her. So, but because she came to us, we were able to advocate on her behalf. We were able to reach out to her attorney. And then some of the stuff they had on her background check wasn't even accurate. So they were using a company that wasn't accurate in their reporting. The attorney that she had used was able to get all that straightened out. But now, you know, and people make bad decisions. You know, a lot of times our young women specifically make bad decisions. So now she's 2 more children later. She's three children in, but she has family in the city of Mobile with absolutely no support. I met her mother and grandmother when she was living out of a car, and my staff and I were going in our pockets to keep her in a hotel so that she wouldn't be 7 months pregnant and living out of her car till we could get her housed. And we did get her housed. Eventually we got her into some housing, but she has gotten job after job. Her oldest child, she continues to have issues with. She has to quit her job because there's no support with her family. The school calls her every day that her child is acting out. And so eventually she loses the job, right? Because she can't keep taking off from work. This is the child that was homeless with her. And I remind her all the time. I said, I think the homelessness has impacted him more than you recognize. He's about 5 now, but there are ongoing issues. And so I'm saying this to put some humanity to this of why, and they'll say, well, people don't want to work. Here's a young lady that wants to work. She's made some bad decisions. She got 2 more kids. Okay. The fathers are not helping out. They quit a job. She's not getting child support and she can't seem to get out of this hole. So, and I have found out it's not just her. There's a unseen community here in Mobile. She has friends that are in the same situation that she's in. So it goes, and Danny, those go back, I guess, to those social determinants that we really have to figure out. There really is no safety net. I think that there's a false sense that there's a safety net, but there really is not. She's in housing and she is stuck.
Yeah.
She is stuck. If she can find a job that will work with her, because she has nobody that will help her with her kids at nighttime, the only time she can work is Monday through Friday while they're in school. She can't work on the weekends. No one will keep her grandparents, the great-grandparents, nobody steps up. She has siblings, nobody steps up. What do you do in a situation like that where you have a young lady? And I stay engaged with her because I've heard her make comments that I want to give up, right? I'm tired. I can't get ahead. I'm tired of asking people for help. And she wants to help herself. But then what do you do in a situation like that? So there are more wraparound services that are needed so that we can help to get people. She's in housing, but she's not. She's in poor quality housing. The example I give you about stuff where she's living, that she's been without a stove for 3 months now. They won't fix her stove. So you do know that that's costing her more money because her stove is not working. So now she's having to buy all this microwave stuff to try to microwave food for her kids to eat. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of things that go into play about, you know, spending her food stamps on junk versus when she could buy some fresh meat and vegetables and things that she can cook for her kids that now she doesn't have that opportunity to do. So I just, I can get on my soapbox about it. So there's a lot of work to do. Thank you so much for having us today. Danny, I don't know if you have any closing remarks for everybody.
No, we're good. We're right at, I guess, 12:02 or
Yeah.
so. So this was a good, I think, time to have this discussion. And I'm sure people probably have more questions and things, but we can be reached. Be more than willing to continue the dialogue and even, one-on-one, whatever it takes.
Thank you. And Teresa and Danny, if you'll put your information in the chat. And
Sure.
that way, if anyone needs to follow up directly, they can do so. They can also reach out to United Way and we can connect you to our panelists. Like I said in the beginning, that went by very fast, but we are grateful for the time that you've taken out of your day. And thank you to Teresa Bettis and Danny Patterson for being our panelists today and really enlightening us all on how bad the affordable housing situation has become in our community. All right, and Leslie has launched our poll, so please provide your feedback. And we will come together next month in April. So enjoy your Friday and happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.